Sony are undoubtedly a leader in the interchangeable lens, full frame and APS-C camera market, as well as the sensor making market. They have an incredibly well built out line of full frame cameras nowadays. We've got the A7 IV, which is kind of a jack of all trades, mid-range resolution, just a really solid range of specs. We've got the A7S III, S for sensitivity, third generation, offering great video connectivity. To be honest, this is probably the one in the whole range that's starting to show its age. We've got the R5, R for resolution. This has the great new screen, 61 megapixel, AI autofocus, an amazing camera. Then we have the A1, which arguably is kind of all three of these blended into together to be Sony's current flagship camera. We then have the A7C Mark II and the A7CR, which are kind of pared down, stripped back versions of the A7 IV and the A7R5. Lacking in some respects, single card slot, but actually ahead in some other respects, and kind of quite a nice little small package. And then we have the newest and hype camera on the market, the A9 Mark III, the first camera of its kind with a global shutter with just unbelievable, unmatched speed and the best ergonomics of the entire range. So as we see, a wonderfully built out range of cameras, but in my opinion, there is still a gap in this lineup, and that's for a true flagship camera. Something, for example, with an integrated grip, with a much bigger battery, with better thermals, with the best media format, and what the hell, just let's get crazy, maybe even a top screen for seeing your shooting data at a glance. Now, to be clear, this isn't a critique on Sony. It applies to all manufacturers. You know, we've got the Canon R3 and the R5, both great cameras, but there's still a gap above them that we're waiting for the R1. You also have the Nikon Z7 II. It's a very capable camera, certainly able to produce professional images that you can sell and work with. But if you were to compare it with the Z8, it's just at a different level. And above that, you then of course have the Z9, which is a superior camera with dual of the best media, bigger battery, better thermals, that just gets the job done in a more reliable way than even the Z8. So every camera range is going to have a true flagship worthy of the banner, or at least they should. Now, Sony are certainly moving in the right direction. We've got third generation for the S, fourth generation for the 7, fifth generation for the R, and the A9 III is an incredible camera despite being in its third generation. It probably has the best of the best. Certainly moving in the right direction. They're hugely capable and very, very customizable cameras. And between them, there's a lot of variation in terms of layout and the way that you can work with them. If you're a Sony Alpha shooter, check out my new Sony setup guide. It takes you through all of the full frame cameras, what every single physical control on each of the different camera bodies does and what you can do with it. An initial setup guide for once you get it out of the box, how to get it up and running and get the most out of it for your style of shooting. And then a complete menu deep dive that takes you through all the different intricacies and the ways that you can customize these incredible cameras to really get the most out of them. They're advanced computers. It's not as simple as put it in manual mode, just set your aperture, shutter speed, and ISO anymore. To get the most out of what these offer, you really need to understand the nitty-gritty. So this course takes you through all of that. Full details are below. Now let's define some terms for this video. I am not for a second suggesting that Sony cameras aren't capable of pro work. That would be an absolutely stupid and ridiculous thing to say. A lot of my favorite photographers are Sony users. But just taking a step back, you can take your VW Beetle or your Dacia Sandero and race it on the street. That doesn't make it a race car. Would you agree? In my mind, and this isn't an attack on Sony, none of this video is an attack on Sony. In my mind, what makes a camera a professional grade camera is that it just works in any condition. Rain, hail, or sunshine, 50 degrees Celsius or minus 40 degrees Celsius. it will get the job for you. Whatever it's specified to do, the formats it offers, whether it's video or stills, the frame rates, it is able to do them without overheating, without needing to change the battery every half an hour, without having to, without being fiddly, to be able to use it wearing gloves if you're in minus 40 degrees, to be able to really take a beating and keep on working. It basically, the technology is rock solid. It's uncompromised. There's no bottlenecks in terms of processing or its overall speed. And if there is a compromise, it's a compromise we photographers have to make in terms of the budget and the weight to carry it around, because it's going to get its job done. Whereas consumer cameras may compromise on build quality or thermals or this or that, but you get it in the smallest, lightest, most user-friendly package, and there's compromises in the tech rather than in the purchasing or the use of the camera. For me, that's what makes something a pro-grade piece of equipment. And then the second term I think we need to define is what's a flagship. For me, the flagship is the number one, top of the range of the pro cameras that a manufacturer makes. So whilst you could argue that maybe a Z7 II is a pro-grade camera, maybe, the Z8 is a pro-grade camera, but the Z9 is the flagship. Uncompromised media, uncompromised thermals, the best battery life, the highest price, it's the king of the hill. So a manufacturer, by my definitions, can only have one flagship, even though they may have lots of pro cameras, but some manufacturers don't actually have any pro cameras. Now, I would argue that a lot of the Sony cameras do fall within the pro category by that definition, and all of them are capable of producing work that can be sold and used for clients in that other sense of the word pro, but they don't have a clear flagship to me. And that's a topic for another day. They would say it's the A1. I think the A9 has completely muddied the waters, but let's just dig a little bit deeper on this, because I think Sony could decimate everyone if they were to take this seriously. On the A9 III, the grip has been greatly improved. It's got a new function button. It's got the best screens, the best EVF. The speed is incredible. They've done miracles to get all of that into what is still a fairly tiny little package with dozens of buttons and dials crammed in all right next to each other. But limited space just means that you can't have a battery much bigger than that you can't have media bigger than an SD or a CF Express Type A if you want a pair of them. And it necessarily limits the thermals because you're going to have all of those components jammed up right next to each other in a small footprint. I don't know about you guys, but I think a lot of pros, myself included, or a lot of enthusiasts or amateurs or whatever, people who are spending a lot of money on a camera, don't want to be carrying half a dozen batteries to a big day of shooting in 2024. And they don't want, I don't think it's acceptable for a pro-grade camera to be overheating in a video mode that it advertises as being able to record in 2024. It was okay on my A7R II when it was first bringing in 4K, but now in 2024, I don't think it's okay. And in terms of cards, I mean, come on, we've got 61 megapixels at 10 frames a second on this guy, or 24 megapixels at 120 frames per second on this guy. And we're using cards that have a maximum speed performance, if their best world scenario, of 800 to 900 megabytes per second, when there are cards on the market that can do 4 gigabytes per second. That's a serious bottleneck for what could be just a market-destroying camera if we got rid of the bottlenecks. So look, Sony pushed the market forward. They move first, they develop the technology, and they drag Canon and Nikon and others kicking and screaming a couple of years later to follow the trend. And I think Canon and Nikon owe them a debt of gratitude for that. Whether it was going in with full frame mirrorless when Canon and Nikon were openly deriding the idea and making fun of it in their presentations that DSLR is the future, not mirrorless, and then years later caught up, or when they brought in 4K video with the Sonys, or when they brought in subject-detect autofocus, or AI autofocus, or now the global shutter. They move, and then later the market follows. except when it comes to bigger, beefier, uncompromised bodies. Even going back to like A99 cameras, they never had a really big, no compromise flagship. Now, I know there's two camps within mirrorless. There's kind of camp A, who want, thanks to not having the whole mirror assembly, they want it as small and light and portable as possible. Fair enough. Sony has them covered now. But there's also group B, which I would say I'm in, who want the best possible technology, the better optics that are possible with the shorter flange distance, the things that having an EVF that shows you real time what you see is what you get through the viewfinder. We want the best possible performance, and we're willing to pay for it, and we're willing to cart it around even if it's big and heavy, as long as it's the best they're able to present to us. And right now, I think Sony still has a gap, and there's room for them to grow in that part of the market. And again, I'm not saying that they're not capable cameras or that they're not as good as Canon or Nikon, but I'm saying, why limit yourself with that size constraint when you could drop that and get even better? I mean, Christ, can you imagine if an A7R5, an A9 III, or an A1 that was the size of an R3 from Canon or a Z9 from Nikon, that really had the space to breathe, to put the best of the best, to improve the thermals, to put Generation 4 CF Express B cards and the best battery and the best of everything in them, what that could look like when you got rid of the bottlenecks. So then there was, you could shoot your 120 frames a second or your 61 megapixel frames and just be able to keep shooting without it ever buffering, or to be able to have an A7S5 when it comes, that has the very best video codecs and can just shoot uncompressed RAW to cards that are capable of it and not overheat. It's not going to happen in a body like this. And if it does, the processor that's required is going to mean that the battery life just gets worse and worse and worse, and the thermals are going to get worse and worse and worse. There has to be some limitation. There has to be something that gives. And I would argue that Sony have actually done the hardest part of all of this already. When you're designing any kind of piece of technology, especially a camera, you're always going to have a trade-off of kind of the processing power, the battery life, the thermal management, the size, the weight, and the price. And if you are trying to compromise on as few of those as possible, the price is going to start climbing and climbing and climbing, and that means your market is going to shrink and shrink and shrink, and then it becomes maybe not commercially viable. But look at these cameras and what they're already achieving in such a small form factor, and that they're already getting the market to pay $6,500 for an A1, more than a Canon R3 or a Nikon Z9, despite the limitations that this small form factor has. They already have production capability. I mean, gosh, they're bringing a 24 to 50 f2.8 lens and rumors of a 24 to 70 f2 lens when they already have half a dozen standard zooms. They obviously have production and development capability. They're not limited in that sense. I really think they've basically done all of the legwork already. They've been able to miniaturize and get things to work in such a small package already. If they now let it grow, it could be game-changing. Can we just have a moment of silence for my credibility for saying the word game changer? What a disgusting term. But you see what I mean. They've done so much in such a small package. They already have a huge user market. Even if not everyone picked it up, there will be people who want the best of the best, and if they can have something where the battery lasts 3 or 4 times longer, the cards are literally 5 times faster, the thermal management is no longer a problem, and it still has their best autofocus and class-leading this and that technology that they've developed, but then they've got 30% more space to play with in the camera that they can build out even more or put in the even better processors because they have the space and the thermals aren't going to suffer. Man, Canon and Nikon then really would need to be worried. The one kind of thing that tempers my mood on all of this is that Sony are already just crushing the market. I'm sure they have the user data. I'm sure they have a clear idea of what would sell and what wouldn't. So there must be a reason why why they aren't bringing this out. What do you think it is? I personally think if they took that physical limitation off, just went balls to the wall and built the best camera they could with the best battery, best cards, best processor, and they charge $8,000 for it, I actually think it will sell like crazy and it would decimate just about everything else on the market. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Also, let me know what would be your dream camera if Sony were to bring out a new flagship that was uncompromised by size. And if you're a Sony user, check out my new setup guide. Details for that are below. Thanks, guys.